Hey everyone, welcome to this week's video. I will be talking about a topic that I've been avoiding for the whole year that I've been on YouTube. Can someone who's visually impaired drive? I will be answering one of the most common questions I am asked. Can you drive as someone who's visually impaired? Buckle up your seatbelts because this one's going to be interesting. My name is Angela and I'm a visually impaired designer. Before I jump in and answer these questions for you, I need to clarify that this is just about my experience as one person who's visually impaired, and that every person who's visually impaired will have a different experience, and the laws and guidelines are going to be completely different for whether you can drive or not, depending on the location of where you live. So every country could be different, even every state or province, wherever you live. Make sure you go and look at the laws that are in your area to know if you're qualified to drive or not. All right, so can someone who's visually impaired drive? This is a complex question, but yes, some people who are visually impaired can drive. I will say, based on talking to people who are visually impaired and blind, the majority of us won't ever be able to drive. And there is a significant amount of people who were able to drive at one point but have had vision loss, whether it was drastic or gradual, that has made it so later in their life they were no longer able to drive. So once again, it really is just a case-by-case basis on whether or not someone who's visually impaired can drive. I live in the United States, and every state in our country has different laws or requirements to be able to drive. In the state where I live, you must have 20/40 or better vision when it's corrected in one of your eyes. And you also have to have a certain level of peripheral vision so that you can see the surroundings around you. The state or place you live can set restrictions on your driver's license. So a full driver's license can drive anywhere, any time of the day. They can go on highways, all that kind of stuff. It is possible to get a restricted license where you can't drive at night, or they would have to require you to wear your glasses or contacts while driving. And these restrictions are on your license so that if you get pulled over or something, the cop is aware of these requirements. You can also be restricted on what type of roads you can drive on. So whether or not you can go on highways or above or below a specific speed limit. And this way you can have adaptations made to your driver's license so you can drive in some circumstances, but not all circumstances. I think that it's great that they can provide restrictions or requirements to make it so that you can drive some of the time, but make it so that it's safe so that you're not driving when you shouldn't be. For example, if someone is night blind, it's common to be able to see just fine in the daytime, but not at night. But with having just the restriction of not being able to drive at night, can make it so they can do all their errands and do things they need to in the day. And then if necessary, when going places at night, they can get rides or use public transportation. All right, so for the rest of the video, I'm going to be answering the question and explaining, can I, as someone who's visually impaired, drive? The answer is yes, I drive. It's a huge blessing for me to be able to drive. And I'm super grateful that I am able to. I understand that there's a lot of people in the visually impaired community that are not able to. And so I feel truly blessed that I'm able to meet the requirements to drive. The reason why I was nervous to make this video is because I don't want people assuming that just because I say that I can drive makes my visual impairment any less significant or that I'm faking or something. So just putting it out there, I am visually impaired and I can drive. Now let me explain this. As I said, in the state where I live, you must be able to see 20/40 or better in your better seeing eye. I just so happen to have the majority of my vision loss in one of my eyes. In my right eye, I see 20/40, which is the minimum requirement to be able to drive. So regardless of my visual acuity in my low vision eye, I barely meet the requirement to be able to drive. I also have enough peripheral vision to be able to drive. Now, with all this being said, I don't actually have any restrictions on my license, but I have given myself some restrictions. There are certain situations when I don't feel comfortable driving. In fact, anytime that I can avoid being the person who's driving, if I'm going with someone else who has a car and is capable of driving, I'll ask them, or even at this point, they just know that I prefer not to drive. There's really no need for me to be the person driving people around when someone else is capable of doing that. With that being said, there has been plenty of times where I am the driver and there's people who are capable of driving in my car. Doesn't mean I don't do it. It's just if it's a situation I feel a little less comfortable, maybe it's starting to get dark or it's a longer drive or my eyes are bothering me that day, that's when I would ask if someone else could drive. There are two situations where if they're both happening at the same time, I will not drive. There's been several times where I will have to sit out, like stay where I am and wait till the circumstances change to be able to drive, or ask for someone to come pick me up and just like leave my car there and then go pick it up later. So I can't drive in the combination of the dark and precipitation. So whether that's rain or snow, this is a terrible combination for me. It makes it so hard for me to see. Now, when it comes to being able to drive in the nighttime in the dark alone, it depends on where I'm driving. If it's a route that I'm super familiar with and I know all the lights, I know where the streets are, I know all the different laws that are in that area, I'm usually fine to be able to drive that route. However, when it's a new unfamiliar route, I'm less likely to be willing to drive in the dark. The same situation goes with when it's raining or if it's snowing or just even on a really bright day. Because of my Aniridia, my eyes really have a hard time when it's really bright outside. And it makes it hard for me to see while I'm driving if it's extremely sunny day when there's no clouds or anything, even with my best sunglasses. A situation that doesn't happen very often where I live is when there's fog. I recall one time that was super, super scary. One of the most scary experiences of my life, where I was driving home and it was dark outside and it was totally clear. And then all of a sudden I start driving into a bunch of fog and I could not see even 6 inches in front of me. And it was the most terrifying thing in the world. So I had to turn on my hazard lights, pull over, and hope that no one would hit me. It just wasn't safe for me to drive. And so I decided to instantly pull over and wait for the fog to pass. I am aware that I'm visually impaired and that there can be challenges with being able to drive. And so I'm very careful about the situations when I will drive or not. A lot of people assume that I would be a terrible driver because I'm visually impaired. I think that actually, in some ways, it makes me more of a cautious or careful driver than a lot of people around me. I'm more aware of my surroundings because I have to pay more attention to make sure that I am doing all right. I've never been pulled over. I've never got a ticket. I've never been in any car accidents. So I think, hopefully, knock on wood, that doesn't happen like tomorrow or something. But I think that's a pretty good sign that I'm doing all right as a visually impaired driver. Now you might be wondering what type of adaptations or things make it different when I have most of my vision in just one eye. So the biggest thing for me with having vision loss in my eye is being able to change lanes on the side where my eye has low vision. Instead of just like using the mirrors or whatever, I make sure to use the mirrors. I turn fully, look all the way back with my eye that I can see well with to make sure that I'm not gonna hit any cars. I will also pay attention as cars are passing me. In general, once a car has passed me, there can sometimes be a big enough gap where that can be assigned to me to maybe be able to change lanes. So I'll wait for a car to pass me, then I'll do my checking in the mirror and turning around to see. Also, if someone else is in the car with me, I will just simply ask them, can you check my blind spot and see if there's any cars that are approaching or if I'm good to go over? And that usually is super helpful. Why not use the people and resources you have with you? I do prefer to use roads that have less traffic. I use back roads a lot. It makes it easier so that I can take my time to figure out the road. I don't feel as much pressure with all the cars around me, and I don't have to necessarily worry about so much of cars speeding past me or making me feel like I just need to go faster. I'm well aware of the streets that are well lit in my area when it's dark, and I take those roads that are more well lit, even if it takes me longer to get home from wherever I was driving from. One big challenge I have is being able to read signs from far away. So whether that's me trying to find a street or being able to find like a business that I haven't been to. So I will rely on Google and her voice talking to me while using Google Maps. Sometimes I will have to pull over to the side of the road when I'm getting close to my destination and look closer at the Google Maps and memorize kind of how many streets and which direction I'll be turning. Don't get me wrong, there are so many times that I'm focused on driving and I can't like look at the map or anything that I get lost or make a wrong turn and it makes my travel longer. But I'm okay with that because the fact that I can drive, I can handle some situations like that. A couple of tips that have helped me when trying to drive is always making sure that the windows in my car are clean, because who needs more obstruction of being able to see where you're going when you already have low vision? I tend to stay in lanes that have a solid white line or the double yellow line because it's easier for my eyes to follow the solid paint lines than the dotted dashed ones. It's also helpful for me to be able to follow the curves in different areas where the street kind of changes slightly by intentionally staying behind a car and following which direction they're going. It helps me kind of see what they're doing and then I can adjust based on that. Well, that's everything I have for you in this video, but make sure to subscribe to my channel below and turn on the notification bell because in my next video, I'll be sharing a story time about when I got my driver's license and what it was like being visually impaired, first learning how to drive and how people reacted, including those at the DMV when I got my license. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, whether that's any questions you might have on the topic or your experience with being able to drive or not. Until next time, I hope that you have a fantastic week. Bye!